to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Sue.
Yes.
John Ho.
Yes.
John Hammerlich. Yes. Mark.
Here.
And Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, now it's time for the voluntary Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we need approval of the minutes. There are no minutes available for approval from the last meeting. I'm assuming that's what that was. We need amendment and approval of the meeting this evening, the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. No amendments to this evening's meeting agenda. We'll move forward. Just for a quick update here, not an update, but informational thing. There was one person that listens to the meetings on the radio, and there's probably more than one, but they were concerned that we weren't identifying ourselves when we were talking. So if Mr. Mayor, you'll get the attention of the chair, and then maybe if I could just recognize the people on the assembly by Member Haverlick, Member Flint, etc., because I don't want to just call you by your last name. I think that'd be kind of rude. So that's the protocol we're going to use there, if everybody's all right with that. Does that sound good to you, Mr. Hogue?
Sounds fine.
Okay. Now we're on to public hearings and bid awards. And public hearing on ordinance 2013-1, implementing an area-wide sales tax. The ordinance has received legal review. During review, it was noted several of the chapter sections from the city code are dated and should be considered for change now versus additional expense in the near future for updating. Changes made to the ordinance since its introduction include new definition for alcoholic beverage, cleanup of language throughout that says the sales tax is payable by the buyer and collected by the seller, providing a less complicated appeals process by eliminating a sales tax board of appeals and having the assembly address appeals, and adding a civil penalty for misuse of a senior exemption. Due to these changes, the Assembly will conduct an additional public hearing at the February 4th meeting, which will be the third reading of these ordinances before us this evening. So this stands true for the next two ordinances as well, I believe. We're going to have another public hearing on them just because we've done some changes since the first reading. Anybody want to talk on public hearing for the implementing of an area-wide sales tax? Seeing none. The next item under public hearings is a public hearing on ordinance 2013 number 2, implementing an area-wide transient room tax. The ordinance has received legal review. During the review, it was noted by council that the ordinance does not address combined price packages. The proposed ordinance has been amended in several areas to address transient room tax as it relates to packaged sales. Due to this change, the Assembly will conduct an additional public hearing at the February 4th meeting prior to the third and final reading of the ordinance. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to talk to this under public hearings? Mr. Payne, can you please step to the microphone and state your name, who you represent?
I'm Mike Payne. I'm representing Rocky Point Resort. I just wanted to start off by saying that I understand that there was some legal issues brought up and that our lodge is not part of that. We have no part of being the lawyer. I was contacted by a few of the other lodges and asked us to do that. We said, no, we understand there's going to be a bed tax and we understand the sales tax, but we just wanted to make the numbers justifiable, for us and make it easier for everybody to figure out. I understand that the borough worries about the bed tax, the way it can be broke down. We discussed that earlier today about how other places in different boroughs have broken it down to where the room is $0, or charge $5, or it's, comped or whatever. And really, for what we supply for our $370 a day, that's what we charge. That includes your skiff, meals, and if you broke it down just by going by numbers in town and you left the bed till last, our skiff motor plus gas, if you were to rent it in town, that's $160 without gas. The 3 meals a day plus, you know, all the snacks, pop, everything, that's $75 a day. I mean, if you could buy that in town for that cheap. Fishing gear, bait and lures with the price of bait and lead and all that, you know, say $30. Fish cleaning, packaging, that's all included. Coastal charges $1.80 a pound. You know, so in the end, and transportation to and from the airport, you know, if you could even get a cab to do that, it's going to be $40, $50. So if the person did catch 12 pounds of fish a day, which we really hope they do, you know, it would be a wash. But we know that wouldn't fly, and we don't expect it to. So that's not what we're proposing at all. What we're worried about is a percentage plan that has been the umbrella percentage plan. And first of all, because we'd have our base rate, but the way we do our lodge is, then there's also, if you want to go on a charter boat, you know, that's an extra money. Your fishing license isn't included. You know, we run to town and pick up amenities for people and just add that on at the end that we've paid for. And, you know, so you get this number at the end, and how do you do a percentage on that number? And anyway, second, and I know there's only a few dollars a night, but I do believe it is fair to say that our rooms are not worth as much as a hotel room in town. You know, our rooms don't have a TV, internet, daily room service, bigger beds, or even a bathtub for that sake. An example of the percentage breakdowns are, if that 30% that we heard on the radio and we discussed, is that would be $111 per night per person, which would mean that each of those cabins, if you had 4 people in it, which we have, would be $444 a night per cabin. Even if you break it down to 20%, you're looking at $74 per bed. That's still $296 per cabin. And at 15%, you're looking at $55.50 per bed. So that's $222 a cabin. Now the Scandia house, they charge $120 per night for 2 people. So you're looking at $60 per person per room. You know, so those numbers for me is you have location, but then just not the amenities that a regular hotel room has. And we're not selling the room, we're selling the fishing experience and all that. The third reason is the paperwork for both parties. I really think having a dollar amount set per bed or per person at the start would get rid of the percentage umbrella, and just trying to figure out, you know, what goes under it. And especially if we're ever audited, or the city auditor, or I guess borough auditor comes, and to be able to say, you know, the X amount of dollars per person per day, here's how many we had, here's what money went into the checking account, instead of saying, oh, well, you know, that we didn't include the charter, we didn't include, you know, whatever he bought else, and so this is our base package. Because really when we do it, the guys come up and they write one check at the end of the deal, and, you know, trying to separate it all out and all the paperwork and all that. So what I propose is that each lodge owner comes in prior to the season. There's only going to be 4 or 5 of us, you know, and justifies his or her bed charge that is reasonable to both parties. That way we have a number that's set. And I understand that some rooms at our place might be different than some others, but, you know, as long as you have something that you can break down and do. I realize it'd be more paperwork and time for the borough employees, but in the end, I believe that everybody would feel better about it. If I was to come in, I would propose that Rocky Point Resort is at, you know, our value would be $40 per bed. This would mean, if we are full, hopefully, the first 5 cabins, which house 4 people at a cabin, you would have a bed tax of $160 that would be taxable per night. If we have another cabin that only sleeps 2, that would still be $80 for that cabin. And then we have one that sleeps 6, so there you're looking at a $240 that we'd be taxed on. You know, it seems more reasonable, the paperwork-wise, for everybody. And then that we could also present that to our clients when you break it down to say, you know, here's what you're paying. We always try to break it down to show that they're getting a better deal than they are getting in town. That's how, you know, we're trying to get clients and keep that going. But we would like to see something simple. You know, anytime you're dealing with percentages and stuff that you can hide, stuff that, you know, whereas this would be so basic, because you could say, here's our ledger, we have to keep that ledger for, you know, how many people are there per night for this insurance and through everything else. And you could just say, we agreed on this at the start of the year, it was $40, maybe it's a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, but here's at the end of the deal, here's how much money, we owe you. The auditor comes to town, you can hand him an envelope and say, this is what the deal is, so.
Okay, well, any questions of Mr. Payne?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Member Holm.
the problem I had is that I don't know if he was moving away from the microphone periodically when he spoke or something else, but he is, about half his words dropped off and it became somewhere between very hard to understand and I lost them. So if other speakers are going to speak, if you would encourage them to stay close to the microphone, that would be helpful.
Okay. Do you need a summary of what?
I got the gist of it.
Okay.
And if there's action on it, there'll be plenty of time for me to be back in time to go into this some more. But just a cautionary.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I may, and Jody, please chime in, and Mike. When we started this process, actually our attorney thought she gave us, 30% or $8 a day, whatever was higher. And, honestly, Jody and I looked at that and go, well, now it gets too complicated. Everybody's trying to, pick between two. And we pretty much decided the percentage may be easier than the $8 a day. Maybe we made the wrong call doing that. I mean, if what I thought I heard you say, Mike, was it would be easier if you just had a rate per day
Right.
in advance rather than messing around with percentages.
That's what I feel like. Then there's no second guessing. Anybody can second guess.
I mean, Jody, do you see? I mean, I don't.
No, in fact, I said the same thing to Mike today when he came in.
Okay.
We looked at the attorney's language, but $8 per day is
Was too high.
What he's talking about is about $2 a person a day.
Yes.
So that's quite a difference.
Yeah, but it is, and I realize that. But if you go to $8 a day on a 4%, that means they're paying $320 a night per bed, and the skiff is in meals and all that's an extra $50. So
Yeah, I think the 8's too high.
Right.
I think 2's probably too low. Anyway, it's kind of a.
right. But I guess my argument is if you go stay at the Scandia house, and for two people to go get that room at $120 a day, they're paying $2 per person, or $2.20 per person.
Except if it's only one person staying there.
Right.
The
The price is lower.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Scandia charges per person, it's per
Actually,
room.
I checked on it today, it's $110 and then versus $120, so it's not, a few pennies.
But, Jody, any thoughts? I mean,
No, unless you wanted to do a percentage on the base, your base fee, and then any additional options that they got, it wouldn't be on that. He said $370 a night, so it would just be a certain percentage, 30%, 20%, whatever the assembly decides on that base, and anything after that wouldn't be taxed, the transient room tax additionally. Does that make sense?
no, I'm sorry.
I know this is just the public hearing part, so I guess when we get to the debate on the second reading of this, we'll need to, I think the simpler the better.
Well, and that's why I was spending some time talking about it here, is trying to come up with an answer. And Mike's been gracious enough to take his time to come in and talk to us and help work through this with us. And, that's important. I mean, we're hearing directly from somebody that this will affect. So his opinions on this should bear some weight.
And unfortunately, when the other meeting's going on is everybody's gonna be gone at sportsman shows. I leave tomorrow. I know my parents are already gone. The other lodge owners, I'm sure they're doing the same thing, because this is the time of year that the shows are going on, so it's really hard to, be able to talk. That's why I would was glad to come in tonight and just discuss the stuff, or what we needed to go over.
Well, the way you explained the cost breakdown of your lodge, that gives us a pretty good idea in my mind what percentage of your overall package the room costs.
Yeah.
So, and when we get into the discussion later, I don't personally, in my mind, see that would be a big issue if it was an annual thing. The lodge had to come in and say our rooms are $45 this year versus
Right.
$38 last year. So figure out per day, per person, what your transient room tax is.
And each year, due to inflation and stuff, we do up our prices by $10, $15 or whatever it happens to be that year. But, so it would change throughout, and it wouldn't, I don't think that it should be a set number to where you're grandfathered in at a $40 or $30 or $50 or whatever, and then in 10 years, we're still paying that. That's why I just said it'd be nice if you could come in beforehand and say, okay, what's it like in town? What did the hotels raise their rates? Are you getting more room tax from them? And it should be a negotiable number at the start of each year, to where you can work it out, where it would never go down.
Jody, any thoughts? I mean,
It would be nice to have something in the ordinance, and I would just suggest then saying 4% of all lodging, and you break down lodging on your invoices to your customers. And then make sure it's the reason why we stuck this section in is so they could justify it, though. So they would maybe we would have to add something that said this needs to be justified to the city or the borough each year. I don't know.
I know, excuse me, my dad was at a show and talked to a lodge owner in Sitka, and he said that their borough over there is that they do break it down this way, to where you're just paying on a certain, your bed tax, and you go in and say, I break it down to where, my bed is, or the bed is this. Because obviously we're charging for a bed. If you try to, break it down all the other ways, you can come out and make everything turned out to be zero, or, one thing out of it. And so I don't expect that. It's just, getting a reasonable number that everybody's happy to work with. And, we live in this town year round and don't want everybody all mad and stuff. So I totally understand that. It's just, the hard part, and like we talked earlier today, was you have clients that have come for 25 years that have never paid that, and then all of a sudden they're bringing their grandkid up, and or 3 or 4 other people, and by the time you break it all down, it's not that much. It's just a single guy coming up, but you have a guy that's writing a substantial check, and then you're looking at $300-400 between the property or bed tax and the sales tax. Then that's when we're going to get to questions of what in the world's going on here, where if I can break it down and say, well, you got into the borough, here's your sales tax, here's your bed at such and such a night, and here's your 2 numbers, and then to be able to turn it in here and have no problems with the numbers and have it work out.
Member Strand, did you want to?
Yes, I had a question for Mike.
Yeah.
Do you have any packages that show a room rate?
No, we don't.
It's just the full.
It's just a
Per
full,
day.
and I actually brought what our brochure says, just to show what it includes.
Jody, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to mention bed and breakfasts. They don't break it out. They pay 4% on the entire night. So they also serve breakfast. So we just have to think about them a little bit when we're making a decision on this.
Yeah, see, honestly, I've never had to deal with it before. So this is our first time going at it, so I haven't paid any attention except for what my sales tax says that, in town. So I don't know what bed and breakfasts do, or, I don't what anybody else does in town. I would just like, it'd be, the simpler the better for us. And I would like it to be simpler to when we come in and drop off our money, or the tax wise, and you have somebody else show up to say, where does that money come from, or why don't you have this much? You can just go, here's the deal.
Well, thanks for your testimony, Mike. and
Yep.
we'll take it into consideration when we talk about the
Okay, you're welcome.
of this later. No, any more questions for Mike? No. Okay. Okay, now we're going to have the public hearing on ordinance 2013, number 3, providing for the installation of elected officers and appointments to vacancies. The ordinance has received legal review. The ordinance has been further amended to conform to the borough charter requirement that if the vice mayor is required to serve as mayor, the vice mayor's seat on the assembly shall be declared vacant and the vacancy filled per the ordinance. This prohibits a vice mayor to automatically return to their vacated assembly seat should they later vacate the mayor's position. Anybody in the audience want to testify to this? Okay, seeing none. We'll move on to visitors' views related to the agenda. Any visitors have views related to the agenda tonight? Seeing none. Visitors' views unrelated to the agenda. Nobody raising their hand for that one either. No board, commission, and committee reports. So we'll move to the consent agenda. There's 2 items, I believe. Yeah, 2 items tonight on the consent agenda. A is accept a Rasmussen Foundation grant. The Rasmussen Foundation has offered a $13,000 grant to the borough to be used toward refurbishment of the community gym floor. That's A. And B is accept the Rasmussen Foundation grant. The Rasmussen Foundation has offered a $12,000 grant to the borough for library collections enhancement. We have a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move
Number
that
4.
we adopt the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the items on the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously, which we need tonight. Mr. Hoag,
Yes,
did you want to vote on that?
I did.
Okay, I didn't hear you. I might have, that ear was turned off. Thanks.
The other thing, as long as we're talking on making noise, when the finance director talked, I couldn't hear one thing she said. I just asked for a little more consideration on trying to get microphones to speakers tonight. Thank you.
Okay, I think the only speaker you're going to be working with is the one on the phone in front of me here, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the way it's wired up in here?
Correct.
Okay,
They're
so,
speakers, Mr. Mayor, but they're pretty far away from the phone.
okay. All right, Member Hoag, we'll work on that. Sorry about that. Report of other officers. Seeing none, we'll move to the mayor's report. Seeking letters of interest. The borough is seeking letters of interest from qualified borough residents to fill the following vacancies until the first regular borough election in October of 2014. Assembly members, there are 2 positions. Hospital board members, 3. Planning commissioners, 7. Anyone appointed to a vacancy will be required to file a public official's financial disclosure statement within 30 days of taking office. In addition, the borough is accepting letters from individuals interested in serving on the land selection committee. The borough will receive an estimated 1,700 acres from the state that can be used as the borough determines. All letters of interest should be submitted to the mayor or clerk no later than 10 a.m. Thursday, February 14th, 2013 for the assembly consideration at the February 19th meeting. And during that meeting, we're going to have an interview with interested persons seeking appointment to the assembly and possibly to the Planning and Zoning Commission as well, I would imagine. To enable the assembly and community to become familiar with the candidates willing to be appointed to the vacancies on the borough assembly, a question and answer session will be held at the February 19th meeting prior to making the appointments. Existing assembly members are asked to submit questions that they will like to ask of the candidates to the clerk no later than 10 a.m. Thursday, February 14th, in order for the candidates to have advanced knowledge of the question to be asked. And on the voting issue for that meeting, I'd like to see it happen like it has in the past when we were a council by a closed ballot. So all the names for the assembly, for instance, will be put on a ballot. And the 5 of us that are on the assembly will mark the name of the person we choose, and then we have to go back and forth until we get 4 votes for the individuals we would like to see seated on the assembly with us. That kind of, just like voting in an election, and no one knows how you voted. And that is a accepted method. And another item on the mayor's report is a letter to FERC. The borough has learned that Cascade Creek has changed its name and has applied for a preliminary hydro permit at Thomas Bay. And we have a deadline of March 18th to submit a letter of appeal to that process. So that's kind of in the works. We're going to wait and see what comes of the roundtable discussion here February 6th with members of other communities, and just go from there. And the one more thing I'd like to bring up that isn't on the agenda tonight under the mayor's report is that there was a letter from DOT, and maybe Mr. Hagerman could talk to this, on the bike path that goes up along Hagen Drive. There's a totally new design now, and I'm not sure where it breaks off from the road, but it goes off through the Muskeg and cuts across towards Sandy Beach. I guess there's some issues, and there's a comment deadline period. Is it February, end of February, or January, Carl?
February 15th is the deadline for comments, and basically they had, the state had worked up a plan to put the multi-use path, is what they're calling it, extension between the airport and Sandy Beach, right alongside the road, right alongside Haugen Drive, and they've since changed that design. Not really sure why, but they moved the start of that extension about 300 feet towards town from the from Haugen Drive, so roughly across the street from the entry into the DOT maintenance yard at the airport. The path will start there and parallel Haugen Drive until it gets to the turn around the end of the runway, and then it will also turn and meet up with Haugen Drive as it goes by the end of the runway. The state put out, because it's a change in design, they put out a request for comment as part of their environmental review process, and so they're collecting comments for their environmental review, but it's quite possible we can comment on anything we want. So I'm collecting comments, have a couple to send in, and more than willing to take any input that the assembly might have, and I'll provide that or pass that along to the state.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it might be of interest to members of the community to know of the change. So with that ends my mayor's report, and I will turn it over to Steve Giesbrick for the manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of a ongoing, and I think we've put this out on Facebook, and we've been talking about it a little bit, but we've seen some increases in property crimes, specifically vehicle burglaries here in town. We are encouraging any witnesses to come forward and reminding people to, lock their vehicles and don't leave things of value in their vehicles. So, not sure why the sudden spike. I believe the police have some suspects, but it'd be helpful if we had some folks who could come forward and tell us what they've seen. Although this is less of an issue than when we wrote it, but we've continued to struggle a little bit with having some weather-suitable vehicles in the police department. We had a couple of vehicles down, and we're going to take a hard look as the chargers come up for through the motor pool fund and maybe switch them out. I think specifically with the borough, we're going to need to look at vehicles with higher ground clearance and kind of all-weather capability, as we're asked more and more to back up folks. And in particular, we've got a fairly young department, and so we're trying to err on the side of caution, so we'll roll a lot more vehicles maybe than we may have in the past. So we're going to need potentially more vehicles that we can get out in the snow, and we've been using the chargers in the snow, and they'll handle fine with snow tires, and but not quite as good related to the ground clearance side of it as well. So again, we'll keep looking at it. The emergency services group, police, fire, EMT, met to kind of do a debrief on our earthquake/tsunami. we'll make some changes. We're looking at some sirens that didn't work the way we thought they should, and working through that. One of the conversations we're talking about is looking at the cost of an inundation study. It's seemingly spending money on something that we maybe already know, but it basically says in the event of a tsunami, it starts to outline where we should send people. And today, because we've never done that, we have to tell people the standard response, which is 1 mile inland or 100 feet up, which kind of limits where we can send to people. One of the things that the tsunami earthquake did for us was realize that, everybody goes to the ball field, and then we had a mess at the ball field. The lighting is not as good. There's only one way in and out. Bathrooms weren't open. So it may not be long-term the best place to send the whole town to all at once. So we got to work through that a little bit. Again, thanks to Alaska Airlines and KFSK and PIA and I don't know however many other people that opened up facilities to help people. But again, something we're looking at. We may be able to include an inundation study as part of the Borough transition funds to do that kind of a study and have a better idea of where we could safely send people. 2014 budget schedule is out. Jody's group's working on the budget spreadsheets and getting those out to everybody. In fact, I may be out of date. Are they out now? Yeah. So we're in the budget process again. Library roof installation is almost complete. One more cement pour, concrete pour for the floor inside the building, and they're ready to start doing stuff, some of the inside walls and such. Maintenance request forms for all the department heads are out to start identifying those things we need to try to account for next year's budget that we need to work on and fix. Library received a grant to hire a part-time temporary IT aide, and this is to kind of help our staff set up some of our new e-readers and computer equipment and get some training on both for the public and the staff, again, prior to opening the new library. It's a temporary position that we'll use just for that purpose, and it'll go away. The Public Works is continuing to work with DOT on the Birch Street rating, load rating for the bridge. Kind of had some back and forth. We're still waiting to hear what DOT has to say, but we built it to what we thought were the specs that DOT said. They downgraded the load rating. They upped it again. Then they're talking about downgrading it. Anyway, it's kind of a little bit back and forth. And Carl and Chris are working both with the engineer and with DOT to try to make sure we get some straight answers. Not a huge issue on Birch Street, but we need to understand the process really well when we go to work on Rasmus Inge, where the load rating will be that much more important, and we can't afford to have DOT change their mind after we've designed it and built it. Public Works did some initial, call it snow removal, but I think in many cases it was just kind of public safety assessment out at Papke's and some of the other roads. Take a look at it, that if we do snow removal, where do you put snow dumps? What roads should we look at? What do we need to worry about if we have to remove snow? This evaluation will continue. In some sense, the weather has helped us because it's allowed us to go out and look at stuff without having a lot of snow on the ground and try to figure out what we'll do in the future or be asked to do in the future. We'd have a better answer for folks. Sanitation staff replaced the belt on the baler at the end of last week. We did shut the facility down during that process, but it did not affect the collection routes. Landfill stabilization project. This is basically related to the North Harbor where we put the dredge spoils. It's moving towards the design phase. ADEC has provided review comments, no changes in the conceptual framework, and P&D anticipates that the final design will be completed in January. So that's, again, tracking really nicely with the North Harbor plans. And just kind of some kudos out to Donnie. Some sprucing up at the community gym. Had a beautiful mural painted by one of our local artists. You get a chance, go check it out. It's pretty amazing. So that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Any questions of the manager on his report? Do you have any questions, Member Hoag?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. No questions? We'll move forward. The unfinished business. First item is Borough. The Juneau appeal. We have no new information on that item at this time. Future transition items. The Borough is looking into means to provide residents with access to participate in future meetings, either via telephone or internet. In addition, comments received to the questionnaire made available at the January 15th Borough Open House welcome reception, along with requests made by the City of Kupernoff Mayor Dana Tinas, are attached to this meeting packet and will be taken into consideration as the community moves through the transition through the borough process. Redistricting, there's no new information there either at this time. No new information on the SEPA and D. Hiddle and Associates operation and maintenance report for the SEPA system. And that brings us up to, under unfinished business, Ordinance 2013-1, an ordinance implementing an area-wide sales tax in the amount of 6% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the sales tax. This is the second reading. As amended by legal counsel, Ordinance number 1 adheres to the Borough Charter Transition Plan requirements that the former city sales tax provisions become area-wide within 90 days of borough incorporation. The ordinance has been amended by legal counsel since its introduction. We have a motion to adopt Ordinance 2013-1 in its second reading.
I so move.
It's been moved by Member Strand and seconded by Member Flint. Is there any discussion? Any discussion, Member Hoag?
No, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Just want to make sure you're still with us there. I can't tell by looking. No discussion on the item? Will the clerk call the roll?
Sue, Yes. John Hoag,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and John Heberly.
Okay, that brings us to the second reading of Ordinance 2013-3. Wait a minute, back up. 2013-2, an ordinance for implementing an area-wide transient room tax in the amount of 4% throughout the Petersburg Borough and providing for the administration, collection, and reporting of the transient room tax. Second reading is amended by legal counsel. Ordinance number 2 adheres to Borough Charter and Transition Plan requirements that the former City of Petersburg transient room tax provisions become area-wide within 90 days of borough incorporation. The ordinance has been amended by legal counsel since its introduction. Do we have a motion to adopt?
I so move.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Haverlick to adopt 2013-2 in its second reading. Any discussion? Member
So
Strand.
apparently we need to visit Michael's suggestion. Is now the time for that?
Yes, now would be the time to amend Ordinance 2013-2 to make it, I guess, what would you call it, more user-friendly. So who wants to draft up this amendment? I see Jody Teller.
Well, I would just like to make a comment on it. I think it's user-friendly how it is written. I think perhaps after listening to Mike and talking with him today, I would consider, and it's not up to me, but changing it from 30% to 20% in section 4.33.030B, where it says, for combined price package, the tax shall be computed by charging the transient room tax on 20% of the total cost of the combined price package.
What was that number again, Jody? Excuse me.
4.33.030
The rate.
under rate
B.
B. And once you started talking about how each person has their own package and how the rooms, that's not the selling point of the whole package, it starts to make sense a little more to me. because there's usually always at least two people, coming together, sharing a room. Whereas hotels, it's one rate, regardless of how many people, usually.
Member Strand.
So that would make 20% of 370, Mike's package, is $74. And 0.04, is it 0.04? Comes to $2.96, say $3. Is that reasonable?
I mean, it comes down to where you're still dealing with,
But is 20% acceptable to you?
whatever you guys vote on, we'd like to see it last where it matches up.
Oh, Mr. Payne, could you please, sorry.
I'm doing this.
So are we?
Yeah. The 20%, I mean, is at least is down a little bit, but if you do have two people, it's still quite a bit more than a hotel room in town. Just because then if you have two people, then it's saying that those rooms are $145 for a cabin with, I mean, you can't take a bath in it, you can't, all that stuff I said earlier. So, I mean, really, you pass it on down to somebody else. I mean, it's not coming out of my pocket, but it will come out of my pocket if they don't come back. And then it comes out of a lot of people's pockets around here, our business does. But, I mean, I leave it up to you guys. We would like to see it lower, but whatever happens, happens.
Yes.
Michael, you had threw out a number earlier. I can't remember what it was now. I'm sorry. It was like 250 or per day.
For
the transit room tax number you had. At one point
we said just a number, but if you went like $50 a day, then you're looking at that's about 15% or 14%. I guess it'd work out to.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to is whether I. 15% I think works out to roughly $2.25 a day. I mean, it's hard to be exact.
Member Flint?
Well, I haven't been thinking about this except for sitting right here tonight, but it just seems to me that having a daily number would be so much simpler for everybody than a percentage, because every lodge is going to say, well, mine is different. If we do it by bed per day, or I don't know.
This ordinance is going to affect businesses as well in the city, so that's another consideration we have to, and I'm not a real good numbers guy when it comes to taxes and stuff like that, so I have to listen to what the finance director recommends, but we don't want to price our businesses so much where people don't return either.
Right. So, like I said, I'm not worried about the single guy that comes up, his extra $15 for, on bed tax or whatever the numbers are. It's the bigger groups, it's the businesses that they bring 10, 12, 15 clients for 4 or 5 days. Then that bed tax, even though it's a few dollars a night, it starts adding up at the end to where they're going. It just seems like a pretty big jump in 1 year, even though it's only a few $100s or $300. But we do get clients that few $100s makes or breaks them too. So it's I just want to see something that's easy for us to work with, easy for you guys to work with, easy for us to bring in and be able to dump it off. I just learned that we have to do it each month. I didn't even know that. So, but to be able to do it in the in the summertime when everybody's busy, and just to have a set number to where you can just say, here it is.
Okay, thanks. Member Flint?
My question is really for Jody. Would it be a deal where you would just do the daily rate times the 20%? Not, whether or not they bought all the extra bells and whistles that you could have?
You mean on the base package? 20%
Uh-huh.
on the base package. That's what I was kind of trying to say earlier, and Steve said it. I didn't say it very clearly. But yeah, doing something like that would make sense too. If and then all that additionals, like if they decide to rent a boat for another day or have you run to the store to go get stuff for them, that wouldn't be included because that's not part of the base.
So, well, if we did the 20% of a $200 a day per client, that's $40. Then you charge the 4% tax on that. Is that a dollar? What's that come out to? Is my math right? Am I approaching this the right fashion?
$1.60.
$1.60.
Well, except for,
$3.70.
we charge $370.
Okay, so
So it would be,
it'd be 320.
70 is $74. So 4% of that is $296. And 6% of 370 is $22.20. So plus the almost $3 for bed tax, the total tax per day comes to $25.
And there's no cap on the transient
No.
room tax, and there's a $1,200 cap on the
Yeah.
sales tax, so
Right.
that would only go so far, so.
Yeah.
Member Flint?
That was
Let's-
my comment.
Mr. Mayor, if I
Yes.
may. Jody, I mean, do you see any big concerns if we charged a per person dollar amount per night?
No.
In other
not
words,
at all.
rather than a
Not at all.
percentage. I mean,
No,
in
that'd
other
be
words,
fine.
a number like, you know,
I was doing the math for just a hotel room. I don't know exactly what it is in town. I think it's $140 times 4%. That's $5.6, $5.60. So, and if you assume that two people normally, get a room, so maybe $250 per person per night would be reasonable.
that's where I was
So that is an
heading.
average number then that we could work with, it sounds like, for what's being currently charged in town. One thing I was thinking about, since Mike talked earlier in the public hearing part of this, he's talking about changing it on an annual
Yeah, I don't
on an
really
annual
want
basis.
to.
So do you have to revisit the ordinance and change the ordinance, or does the ordinance have to be written in a fashion that this will be adjusted annually, and if it doesn't change, then it stays status quo?
It would
What
be
was-
nice if it would just stay until we wanted to edit it. It's more than meets the eye when it comes to changing ordinances.
Well,
And
I
Kathy
realize
knows
that's
more
what I-
about it than I do, but it's costly with the attorneys looking at it and
Right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Member Hogue.
I would suggest this be tabled or put over for a session and allow staff to sit down with the affected merchants and try to work this out at some length. This is complicated enough that I'm concerned that haste will make waste, one way or the other. I mean, ideally, we should write an ordinance that does not have to be revisited every year.
Exactly, that would be my preference as well. This is just the second reading, and then the third reading on the 4th of February, if that's the date of our next meeting, there will be another public hearing. I guess that would also be the third and final reading. That gives us 2 weeks between now and then, and I don't know what the schedule is. When does this have to be implemented by, Kathy? April, to meet the 90-day?
April 1st was, but I think they've got a lot to do to finance too, to get it all set up and ready to go.
Right.
But you can amend it at the next read, that third and final reading.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hayes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just take a
Can you
minute.
hear him, John?
If he stays close to the microphone, Mr. Mayor, I can. He's been fading in and out, and Jody, I hear about 1/5 of what she said.
Okay, well, this is Donnie Hayes, Parks and Rec Director, so we'll see if you could hear him.
I'm actually going to wear a couple different hats for just a minute, if I could. I have my hand in a couple of different places on this. You know, my father owns Petersburg Sport Fishing Charters, and then also as the liaison for the city to the Chamber of Commerce. I think a discussion of what the transient room tax money goes towards is an important discussion to have. But before I get to that part, if we can just from a standpoint of managing money and from a charter business / lodge, I have to agree it would be simpler if it was a set price that that every year I knew that my 6 guests per week were just going to pay a flat rate. And I just knew if it was $2.50, great. That sounds reasonable to me. And the reason it sounds reasonable to me is because I know where this money is going towards. I know that number one, the transient room tax money goes towards helping to provide funds to the Chamber of Commerce, which right now will be this weekend at the Seattle Boat Show, talking about the Petersburg community and the benefits of coming here, which is going to benefit our lodges in the long run. And so that tax really does provide a benefit to tourism and the community in that way. The second part to that tax is that money also, if I understand this correctly, Jody, also goes towards grants in the community for beautification and for whether it be signage or nonprofit groups that can put in asking for those grants. I know that the Sea Life group, the Whale Foundation, they've gotten that grant a couple of different times, which has provided information and banners throughout the town where tourists can actually walk by, stop, and looking, okay, this is what the whales are about. I know that they're about to put up a sign over by Ingy Bridge that talks about sea lions. And those are things that this grant is doing and this tax is doing. So it really is a benefit to the community. So I feel comfortable as a member of Petersburg Sport Fishing, but also as a liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, saying that $250 sounds reasonable to me, just because I know it's going to benefit my business.
Any other member Strand?
I have a question. The rate change is because your expenses go up. Last year your package was $360 and this year it's $370.
Right.
So
I wasn't saying revisit this every year. I was saying that as our rates go up, I expect, that we're only going up $10 a year or $10 every 2 years. So really, you're talking 2 or 3 pennies here
right,
or there.
the percentage, if the percentage is there.
I was just saying as our tax goes up, or our room goes up, then we'd expect to pay whatever more tax is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I'd
member.
like to propose an amendment to the motion on the section we're discussing. I believe it's section 4.330.30 rate, section B, that we rewrite it to say for a combined price package, the tax shall be computed by charging the transit room tax on 20% of the total cost of the combined price package, or a minimum of $3 per night per person as a bed tax.
Do we have a second to Mr. Haverlick's motion? So we could discuss the amendment.
I'll second that so we can discuss it.
Okay. It's been seconded by Member Flint to, for Member Haverlick's amendment to the ordinance under section 4.33030 under rate. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he wants to change it so it reads, for a combined price package, the tax shall be computed by charging the transient room tax of 20% or $3 a night. Is that whichever is, or is there going to be whichever is more, or is it, I can't remember exactly how you worded it. Kathy, how did he?
He's got it 20% of the total cost of the combined price package, or a minimum of $3 per night.
Okay.
Is that how you got it?
Yeah, minimum $3 per night bed tax.
Any more discussion? Member Flint?
Right.
How does that compare to what the hotels pay right now? Do they pay $3? I'm lost without a calculator here.
Well, I was guessing $140 a night, and that's $5.60.
Okay.
Wait a minute, Mike. Does this just pertain to people that have combined price packaging? So this would not
Yes.
pertain to a hotel?
It doesn't
Or a
change.
bed and breakfast?
No.
Just the lodges,
No,
basically?
just the lodge.
Oh, okay.
Well, the bed and breakfast, the breakfast is a combination, right?
This is member Strand. Yeah, it is, but I don't think that they're recognized as as a combined package
No.
entity.
No.
Okay, so you have to be able to go fishing and have dinner, fresh salmon for dinner to make it a combined package.
Member Strand, I think the reason they do that is because it's such a high percentage of it is a place to stay, and the cookies and
Right,
milk they get in
cookies
the
and
morning
milk,
doesn't
yeah,
amount to much
coffee,
of the
right. Okay, just,
package. Is that why it's done that way, Jody?
Yes, and a combined price package means looking at the definition above, so when your services are more, than your actual lodging.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. Any more discussion on the amendment to ordinance of Mr. Payne?
So by that $3 per person per bed, then you're saying that my clients that come and stay then for that room, they're gonna be paying, if there's 4 people in there, they're gonna be paying $12 a night, whereas you can go to the Scandy house, and even if it is $140, they're gonna pay $5 a night.
Well, twice.
Actually,
Twice.
if I may,
Okay, let's-
the way this is worded, or higher,
Yeah.
because more than likely your $3 per night is low when you compare the 20% to the full package price.
No.
It might.
this year it
No.
isn't,
Okay,
but
let's get recognized before we speak, so we keep some
Apologize.
semblance of order. Any more discussion on this? I mean, Mike, do you have more input?
Like I said, we go back to where I don't think we should have to pay a higher bed tax than the in town does. Especially when you break it down in the amenities and stuff they get in the hotel room in town versus what they're getting when they stay in a cabin out by Papke's. And so, even if it was the same, but it's hard to say because you have 2 beds in a hotel room. Do 2 couples come and share that hotel room for one price? Is it 2 buddies that share that room for one price? With us, with a single bed, you're not going to shove 2 people in that bed. So it's not, for us, it's more of a per person tax, because you're only taking up 1 bed, whereas a hotel, if you get a queen bed, you have 2 people staying in there. Is it a bed tax or is it a person tax type of deal? And so that's where the conflicting comes into is, for us, is it's, when it gets charged to us, it's a per person tax, not a per se bed tax, because each person's going to be in a bed. So if you have a couple that shows up there, they're going to be paying more in a bed tax. And I know it still boils down to $2, $3. But, you got a couple that comes and stays we have a couple that's going to stay for 10 days this year. And at the end of it, each one of them gets a $30 bed tax on top of the $75, so then that it starts to weigh in on, so do they not come for an extra day next year to make up for that tax? Or, it's just, and I think that it's something that, unfortunately, there won't be more people here to represent the other lodges. They don't even don't appear until May, so you don't see any of them except through the lawyer, unfortunately. So, for you guys, and we won't be here at the other meetings, so that's why I kind of wanted to say everything tonight, just to get it out there.
Mr. Mayor? A question for Mike. Each person in that bed, though, is paying your $370, though, right?
Yeah.
So it is a per person charge.
Right.
Okay, and that's why I wanted to keep this a per person charge.
Right.
So, okay. Thank you.
And I believe that the other lodges are going to be, their number, we all try to compete, so everybody's they're going to be between a 300 and 380.
Yeah.
I know that they might have some extras and stuff. And that's one thing that I will throw out, and I don't see us doing it, but there will be other people that can drop that base rate down if you do the 20% and say, okay, now I'm going to charge you for the skiff. I'm going to charge you for the gas. I'm going to charge you for, and all that would be outside the umbrella that you're taxing.
Right.
We're not going to change ours up, I know that, but I know that will be something you will run into.
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
So we'll have to discuss this amongst us here. So any more discussion on the amendment for item B on the rate for combined price package? Jody, could you do the math for us real quick? You have a calculator back there. What would this mean versus a hotel room versus the comparison with the Rocky Point Lodge. For $370 a night per person, 20% of that is, Nancy did it once, but just so I could compare it. The hotels, people are going to be paying how much a night, and how much are they going to be paying at Rocky Point, just for,
Well, the 20% of the tax on 20% of the 370 is $2.96, which is similar to the $3 per night per person that John proposed. And then, I mean, I can honestly say I have no idea what a hotel room
if
costs
it's
downtown.
$140.
You think it's 140? Okay, then for
120.
it's 120. Oh, times 0.04, then that's $4.80
per room?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So with that, it is this $3 a day, or the 20% is going to be more expensive. So for the people that provide a combined package.
I liked,
Member
this
Strand?
amendment just makes it more confusing to me. And so I'm not sure I can support it. I like John's Hoag's suggestion that staff study this, that we table it till next meeting and till the next reading. And
Okay, so we have an amendment to the motion on the floor that we have to vote on.
right.
Is it any other discussion from the assembly members? Okay, hearing none. This is a vote for the amendment to change Section B under 4.33.030 to $3 or 20% from the 30%. Will the clerk call the roll?
Mark,
No.
Nancy,
No,
John Haverlick,
Sure.
John Hope,
No,
and Sue.
No.
Okay, it fails. The amendment fails. A yes or no vote would be nice for clarity. Now we're back to the main motion. To adopt ordinance 2013 in its second reading.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
I would
Member
move
Hoag.
to table this for till the next council meeting to give staff time to work on this and perhaps bring it back to us in amended form.
okay, it's been moved by Member Hoag to table this until the meeting of February 4th. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
For the sake of
Table.
discussion. It's been seconded by Member Flint to table the second reading of ordinance 2013-2 until February 4th. Any Member Strand?
I have a question. If we don't table this and approve it in second reading, we can still work on it for 2 weeks and change it? Okay.
Correct. This does give us, if it does get tabled, it gives us an extra 2 weeks to work on it because we'll have the second reading again on the 4th, and then the next one will be on the,
And then there'll be an additional 1, 2 weeks after that. So will you be back in a month?
February.
That should be, well, I'd be brown grabbing, but it'll be back in town.
okay, it's the motion on the floor to table ordinance 2013 until the February 4th meeting. Will the clerk call the roll?
John Haverlick,
No.
John Hope,
Yes.
Sue,
No.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Mark.
No.
Fails.
Okay, so that failed. Now we need to vote on, I guess this is the procedure, ordinance 2013-2 in its second reading as it is presented to us tonight, and we could address it at our first meeting in February, at the third reading. Any more discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Sue,
Yes.
John Haverlick,
Yes.
John Hope,
No.
Nancy Strand,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
fails.
So it fails, so we need to ask the clerk what happens now. This ordinance has to be presented to us
Now we have
again in
start
our,
all over.
in our first reading.
Correct.
That was the, okay, well, with that happening, we'll move on to, where are we? Ordinance 2013-3, an ordinance providing for the installation of elected officers and appointments to vacancies in elected offices of the Petersburg Borough. Ordinance 3 carries forward most of the prior City of Petersburg regulations on installation of officers and appointments to vacancies. The ordinance conforms to the Petersburg Borough Charter requirements and is needed to assure that appointments to vacancies are made within 45 days. The ordinance does not apply to any of the advisory boards of the prior city, public safety, harbors and ports board, library, utility, and parks and recreation. Per Borough Charter 19.08C, the Assembly has up to 1 year to determine by ordinance if these boards will continue on a borough basis. The ordinance has been amended by legal counsel since its introduction. I need a motion to adopt ordinance 2013-3.
So move.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Strand, seconded by Member Flint to adopt ordinance 2013-3 in its second reading. Discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Member Flint.
how does this affect the hospital board? They're not listed in this. So they have to be approved before the 45 days?
I believe that's what that would mean. Kathy, what do you read into that?
Apply to them.
Because they're,
Filling vacancies, it says on the planning commission, hospital board, and school board.
so they have 45 days to fill a vacancy just like the Assembly does, and any of the other.
Yeah, and they get filled, how the assembly gets filled is by you guys' appointment. The only one that's different is the school board. They
Okay.
follow state statute.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Member Flint? Or another more discussion?
Well, so when are we going to do this? The last meeting of February?
On the 19th.
So we'll still be within the 45
Yes.
days?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more discussion on ordinance 2013-3? Member Hoag?
I have no more discussion.
Seeing no more hands coming up, will the clerk call the roll?
John Hoag,
Yes.
John Heverlet,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
and Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, it passes. Item G under old business is authorization for membership in Petersburg Chamber of Commerce for 2013. The annual dues for borough membership is $1,500. This agenda item was postponed from the February 7th meeting in order to have a Chamber of Commerce representative present to explain the dues. And I guess we need a motion before discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I move for adoption of the, or to pay our dues in the members, in the Chamber of Commerce for $1,500 minus the discount.
Is there a second? Member Hoag, you hear what's going on?
Yes, sir, and I don't second it.
Okay, that's what I thought by your silence.
I'll second it so we can discuss it and hear what the chamber representative has to say.
Okay, it's been moved by Member Flint, seconded by Member Strand to authorize for membership in the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce for the amount of $1,500. And I believe the staff has some ideas on this as well, but we'll let anybody from the chamber want to get up and speak to this? Fran?
Good evening, Mayor, Assembly members. Thanks for this opportunity. I'm the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce chairperson this year, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chamber Board. We discussed the membership dues that are put before you tonight, and what I'm told is that the dues have not been raised in all the years that we have had membership dues assessed for the city. And historically, I seem to recall years ago when I worked for the city that the building that the chamber is in currently has property tax assessed against it in about the same amount as the dues are. So I think that the dues amount was actually based on the property tax at one time, but I can't swear to that. It seems like there was some kind of a meeting between the beings back when that happened that came to that agreement. In looking at dues for other cities or places that employ more than 100 people, Ketchikan has dues of $1,450 a year for anybody that employs more than 100 people. Petersburg, City of Petersburg, or Borough, excuse me, has over 100 people if you count the part-time, full-time, and temporary employees. So we're a little high, yes, and there was some discussion about what we could do to work with the city to correct any bad feelings that the city may have or the borough may have about the dues that they're being assessed. But we're willing to listen to what Jody has proposed and see if we can come to some sort of an agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any discussion from the member strand?
How long has the city been, I've only been aware of this for the last two, this year and last year. How long has the city been paying dues like that to the chamber?
3 or 4 years that I am aware of. 3 or 4 years.
In the same amount?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you get that information, Member Hoag, that the city's been paying us dues for 3 to 4 years?
Thank you, yes, I did.
Okay, just want to make sure. We have another member, or person from the audience that would like to speak. Mr. Loesch? Could you please state your name just so for the people?
My name's Ron Lesh. The city paid dues long before we moved into the building. So there was a gap in there when the city did not maintain a membership. And then I believe when Bruce Jones was the city manager, the finance officer read the ordinance, or read our lease. We were not being charged property tax. And so at that point, the city joined at the same time we started paying property tax. So that was why there was the gap, and it was kind of mea culpa. We had assumed the lease, and we're not charged sales tax for many years. I believe the lease started in the 90s. Well, the city owned the building.
1991.
Yeah, it was renovated in 91, and I believe that's when the lease started. So that was kind of the history. The city has been a long-term member. There was a gap in the membership.
Thank you, Ron. Jody, would you like to talk about what you and Steve were talking about earlier today?
Sure. First of all, I wanted to say that I agree with Ron. Everything he said is true. And in the lease agreement, it does say that they must pay property taxes on the building and the footprint of the building. And I'm not against paying chamber dues. I think that we should use the transient room funds to do that, though. In the resolution 2004, which sets the guidelines for the appropriation of funds generated by the transient room tax, it states that all identified visitor-related memberships will be paid by the chamber, and the grant will include funds to do so, which means that any tourist membership that we belong to should be paid with those funds. And I believe that being a member of the chamber would be that, would include that.
Did you hear that, Member Hoag?
I did, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I heard most of it. I guess my question is, for our finance director, is where does the rest of the transient room tax money go? Is it all dedicated fund, or has the city made a policy choice on how to spend it?
Most of it goes to the visitor center. Roughly, there's a formula, but roughly $30,000 goes to the visitor center each year. We bring in annually about $40,000 in transient room tax annually, and $10,000 of that usually gets allocated in grants. This previous year, the transient room tax committee went through the resolution, the allocation resolution, and edited it, and I found that we got stuck on the visitor-related memberships because we had not been doing that, using the grant funds for that. The chamber had been paying quite a few of them, and there's one large membership that the borough, the chamber, and PEDC all split $1,000 each, that I'm recommending to the committee on Thursday that the transient room tax funds also pays for.
Did you get all of that, Member Hoag?
No, the last part of it dropped off, and she's recommending to the on Thursday something, and that's all I got.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Yes. This is
Council
Steve.
Member Hoag, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
What Finance Director Jody was talking about was that we receive transient room tax from the various bed and breakfast and hotels and any lodges inside the city limits. That money is is a dedicated, or I guess you could call it restricted type account. It can only be used for certain things. Currently, we give about $30,000 a year of that to the chamber for basically running the visitor center, leaving about $10,000 left over that is currently allocated in grants to other organizations that do things like promote tourism, put up signage, and so on. What Jody's recommending to the Transient Room Tax Board would be to use those excess funds, the $10,000, to not only pay the chamber membership, but to pay some of these other organizational fees that the chamber, PEDC, the city, all jointly belong to in various capacities. In other words, using that transient room tax money to pay those membership fees, which would benefit the city, PEDC, the chamber, and still maintain our membership in the chamber. Jody, did I get all that right?
Yes.
And John, did you hear me?
Yes, I heard you, but I mean, is this circular? I mean, we're paying the chamber one way and we're paying the chamber another to do certain things, and that includes a high amount of dues?
I think so.
And what I just said to you, the answer would be yes. We are planning on, or if we did it as we have in the past, $30,000 going to the chamber/visitor center to help operate that facility, and then also paying the $1,500 membership fee to the chamber with those same funds.
Does that answer your question, Member Hoag?
Thank you, yes.
Okay, Member Flint, you have
And
a question?
then they turn around and pay us property tax.
Correct. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left that off. Yes.
And also, I believe the discount, if you pay by January 31, would bring it down to $1,350, isn't it 10%? So we could save a little bit there.
Any more discussion about the membership dues to the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce? Before we vote on this, if it passes, do we have to designate the money to come out of the transient room tax fund? Is there an amendment to this? This is a pretty simple.
You don't have to. No one's made the amendment, though, to use transient room tax funds to pay this.
So currently, the $1,500 would come out of the general fund?
Yes.
What's the wish of the assembly? What's that, Steve?
I assume unless you amend it to include that statement.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Member Hoag.
I move that we amend the resolution or the authorization to have the dues come out of the transient room tax fund.
Is there a second to Member Hoag's amendment?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded by Member Haverlick to take the membership dues to the Chamber of Commerce out of the transient room tax, like suggested by the Finance Director. Member Flint.
Maybe Jody can answer this one. Is that those funds have a committee that oversees how they're spent, and I'm wondering if that isn't their area, not ours.
Well, once they decide, then it goes to council for approval. So if you approve it now, I think they'll take that into consideration.
And they're meeting Thursday if you'd like to join them.
Yes.
That was Member Strand. Kathy, over here, do you have a comment?
To reiterate what Jody said earlier.
In
they
the
have a
resolution or the
resolution
ordinance?
that says to start paying dues out of here.
dues can come
We
out
haven't
of
been
this.
doing it, so
Oh, okay.
you'd just be following your resolution.
So by doing this, we're just matching what the committee
Yeah,
suggests.
what your resolution tells you to do, you're just reaffirming it.
Oh, we have a resolution.
Yes, you do.
The city had a prior resolution. Oh, any more discussion? Okay, this is to vote on the amendment to make sure that we take the money for the chamber dues if we decide to spend the $1,350 by January 31st. Comes out of the transient room tax. Any more discussion on that? Clerk, call the roll.
John Ho,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Haverlick,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us back to the main motion, authorization for membership in the Petersburg Chamber of Commerce for 2013, dues from the city. Technically $1,350 if we pay by the end of January. Is any more discussion on that? Clerk, call the roll.
Wait,
Yes, Member Strand, you have a,
no, but I saw somebody's hand up back there.
Mr. Hayes.
Before you vote, if I could just remind the Assembly of our membership to the Chamber of Commerce, I do feel is important. As I sit on their board as your guys' liaison, it's nice to remember the wonderful things that the Chamber of Commerce does for our community. Number one, taking care of and maintaining the Little Norway Festival, the Salmon Derby. They take care of the 4th of July. They take care of the lighting ceremony. And so the list of events and activities that they do in this community, number one, brings a lot of tourism to town. And the Little Norway Festival, you go to the hotels, you go to the bed and breakfasts, and you know that each one of those are looking forward to that event because they're going to be full. And so the benefit that the Chamber gives to our community is immense, absolutely immense. And so from my stand as the Parks and Rec Director, which I think I have a little bit of say in tourism in the community, right? I really feel like this is an important thing that we do.
Thanks for your plug. Any more discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Sue,
Yes.
John Ho,
Yes.
John Haverlick,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
That took a while. Okay, it passed. Okay, new business. Resolution designating official public notice posting places for the Borough. Resolution 2013-1. The resolution sets out the places where posting for public notices will be made for the Borough. The Assembly thanks the Trees RV Park Store for providing a public posting area for Papke's. Do we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2013-1?
So move.
Second.
Been moved by Member Haverlick, seconded by Member Strand to adopt Resolution 2013-1. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
John Ho,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and John.
Yes.
Okay, second item under new business, authorization to send a letter in support of Alaska Airlines proposal for essential air services. The Department of Transportation is seeking community comment to Alaska Airlines proposal to continue providing essential air service to the communities of Cordova, Gustavus, Petersburg, Wrangell, and Yakutat. Staff has prepared a letter of support for Assembly consideration. Community residents and businesses are encouraged to also express their support of the continued service. Comments by email may be sent to kevin.adams@government.gov until January 31st. Is there a motion to
I move to
authorize a letter?
authorize the letter
Second.
to Alaska Airlines.
Okay, it's been, motion's been made by Member Flint, seconded by Member Havlick to send a letter in support of essential air service. Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Nancy.
Yes.
Sue.
Yes.
John Haverlick.
Yes.
John Ho.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes. I have no items under communication. Do any other assembly members? Okay, no communications. Oh,
No, I have this nagging feeling right now, and I'd like for the mayor to call a recess so we can check our new charter. With that ordinance number 1 on sales tax being defeated, I want to make sure that new charter does not say anything. If it's defeated, it's defeated. And I want to make sure the charter doesn't say that it has to come back in a substantially different form. And there's something in my head saying that is a possibility. And if it's there, I'm going to be asking you guys to reconsider.
Okay.
Okay, so can we just take a
With
minute? So
recess.
I don't have it with me.
with that being said, we'll take a 10-minute
Sorry.
recess.
Surprised last Tuesday in the gym when I saw the new mural up at the old desk there. It's beautiful. It has all the different sports, and it has all our mountains and all our weather, and so I wrote down the name of the artist. It was Tammy Wales, and then it said also Kathy Randrup helped in some way, and I just want to say thank you. It's a very nice addition.
I haven't seen it in person, but the pictures are real nice.
Way better in person.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Any other recognitions? Any staff want to recognize anybody? Okay, seeing no more recognitions, we're on to item B. Borough Attorney. City Attorney Paul Dillon has advised that he is working toward retirement and reducing his number of clients. Now appears to be the opportune time for Petersburg and his firm to part ways. Mr. Dillon will be preparing the RFP for Borough Counsel and will assist the Borough in selection of new legal counsel. Dillon's firm, Dillon and Finley, will not be responding to the RFP. In the meantime, because of all the outstanding legal concerns related to borough formation and transition, the firm of Hedlund, Brennan, and Heidemann will be interim general counsel under the same terms and conditions as engaged for borough formation matters. Any comments on that? Okay, that moves us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.